All right, everybody, welcome into episode 59 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. This is the episode recorded on January 12th, 2023. I'm Nicholas Hill, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, of the United States of America. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing here on this Thursday evening?
I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Nick. Second episode of this new year. This kind of crazy year, at least in Brazil. On Sunday, things went a little nuts, but I'm here to talk sports and a lot of it's exciting time here in Brazil as well as the state championship starts. I put hashtag state championships are back here in Brazil, but in US always January prime time for football and on Monday, we had a game that I thought was going to be excited, but by halftime was done.
No, I had it turned on Wednesday. You know the show Wednesday about Wednesday Adams on Netflix. I had that thing turned on by the middle of the second quarter. Um, yeah, it was just TCU was no match, unfortunately, for Georgia on Monday night, and this was something I was afraid of. I kind of alluded to it last week because we were talking about could TCU beat Georgia, and you know I think we both had hopes that this would be a really good game, but man, Georgia, when Georgia kind of came out this year and they played like that, that there's just that no one was beating them. And unfortunately, they came out like that against Oregon. They came out like that against Tennessee, and they came out like that against TCU, and they looked unstoppable. Um, defensively, they got after Max Duggins. They made him uncomfortable, and Max Duggins really made his living extending plays, rolling out of the pocket, but he was not able to do that on a consistent basis this week against Georgia. They really bogged down Quentin Johnson. He only had 3 yards receiving for one catch in this game. For the NFL prospect, that's the guy TCU really needed to get going. They really only had one big play downfield, at least while the game was competitive. They just could not stay on the field. I think they were too conservative early on. There's some fourth downs they should have gone for it that they didn't, and they just let Georgia get too much momentum. And they let Stetson Bennett sit back in the pocket and read books all day because they got no pressure on him. They let him just pick him apart. Got the ball to Brock Bowers, to all the receivers, let the running backs cook, and it's just they made Stetson Bennett look like a god. And I guess now for the rest of eternity, Stetson Bennett is literally going to be a god in Georgia because he's taken them to back-to-back national championships as their starting quarterback, which is a sentence I thought I would never say. I've always probably been one of the most vocal anti-Stetson Bennett people on the internet, but I have to give him his laurels. He's a back-to-back national champion, and not a lot of quarterbacks can say that through the history of college football.
I mean, the hope I think me and you thought was going to be different is when TCU on their third offensive, play when they had the, really impressive pass from Max Durgan for 60 yards, and things were like, okay, we got a match, but then immediately Georgia answers with a touchdown. Then they force a punt, then another touchdown, another touchdown. Georgia offensively, they scored touchdowns they scored on all offensive possessions and was like 5 touchdowns and 1 field goal. It reminded me of South Carolina, Tennessee on the regular season, where Tennessee couldn't stop South Carolina's offense. TCU couldn't stop Georgia's offense. So, as good as Max Durgan was playing on offense, when you don't have a defense competent enough to stop Stetson Bennett, there's nothing you can do. And and TCU I feel like, was worn out by the game against Michigan, where Georgia took the Ohio State game as like a lesson of what to fix.
Yeah, I think too you have to kind of really think about in order to beat Georgia, you really have to have an effective downfield passing game. And that's what Ohio State has, like with C.J. Stroud, Marvin Harrison, Amika Abuga, and the rest of those guys. I mean, Ohio State was like the team that if anyone was going to beat them this year was going to be this year. I mean, was going to be Ohio State. Now, maybe Bama with Bryce Young, but the receivers I don't think were good enough this year if they had played. to beat Georgia. And for Tennessee, when you look back at that match, I think our problem when you look back at the Tennessee game, I just don't think we protected Hendon Hooker up front well enough in that game to give him time to throw downfield. And we were really limited in terms of getting downfield because of some of the concepts Georgia threw at us. And I think that will require some, I guess, modifications to the offense, specifically for Georgia.
But you talk about those games, like compare, like example, Ohio State game versus the Tennessee game. But Tennessee had to play in Athens. Ohio State played in Atlanta, and as much as the crowd was pulling for Georgia, it wasn't 100% or 90%. It was like more like a 75, 80% tops, and it wasn't a home environment. It was like a home-ish environment. So that makes a difference. I feel like if it wasn't a neutral, if Tennessee and Georgia would have played in the semifinals in Atlanta, things probably would have go different because then the crowd would have been 50-50.
So yeah, what I'll wonder is, let's say the Vols somehow still beat South Carolina, but let's say Hendon Hooker still got hurt, and we still go out beat Vanderbilt. We finish 11-1. I think we still probably get into the postseason, and I'd say we probably end up getting the free seed because I don't think they'd want to match at Tennessee Georgia in the first round. So I think we'd play against Michigan. I think even with Joe Milton, I think we still beat Michigan. I think we would beat Michigan.
But what a match, because wasn't Joe Milton a transfer from Michigan?
Yes, he was. So that would have been. So we definitely lost out on that one. But let's say we beat Michigan, and then we get Georgia in Los Angeles. I don't know what we could have done differently from the first match in Athens versus the game in Los Angeles. Because obviously the crowd would have been 50-50. In fact, it might have been a little bit more Tennessee, if we're being honest, just because if we had somehow made the national title game, every Vol fan would have sold their arm and leg to go to Los Angeles. I mean, let's just be real. The entire state of Tennessee would have packed up and gone west and hitchhiked their way to SoFi Stadium.
Yeah, because for Georgia, it was their second time. For Tennessee, it was like their first time in like 25 years.
I mean, just look at the Orange Bowl. I mean, that crowd was 80% Tennessee and Miami. So just imagine a playoff game or a national title. I mean, heck, imagine Tennessee, Michigan, and Phoenix. I mean, that would have been a 70-30 Tennessee crowd. Easy. But, yeah, but, I guess you can't really waste that much time hypothetically because I'm going to be honest. I still don't know if Tennessee would have beaten Georgia this year with a second time around. I mean, I think we could have – I think out of – there are maybe 3 teams in the country – that would have had a shot against Georgia. Ohio State, Bama, Tennessee. I think those teams were it. I know Missouri had them on the ropes, but that was just an off game for Georgia. That was a one of 10.
All teams have off games. Like, had some sort of trouble. Of course, in SEC, you have more off games than, for example, the Big Ten, because I feel like Ohio State and Michigan separated so much from their competition that even if they have an off game, they still beat, Illinois or Purdue by 2 or 3 touchdowns.
And, well, I mean, Michigan, remember that they had to only beat them by like 2 points this year. So I mean, they had to struggle. Ohio State, they had to struggle with Maryland. So every team, I guess, has off days. But I think what really stood out about this Georgia team this year is when the lights turned on, that team turned on. Think about Oregon when they played Tennessee. They, of course, this game against TCU. And yeah, I know their defense didn't play well against Ohio State, but the offense played pretty well and did enough to win that football game. And they were able to respond. Because let's be real, the real national title game this year was Ohio State, Georgia in the Peach Bowl. I mean, that's what it feels like the season ended was in that game.
Which credit to Ryan Day to, because everybody thought after that second half that Ohio State had versus Michigan, they're like, oh my God, they're gonna get derailed by Georgia. And he got that month to really improve their team, and they were a few goals away to playing for the national title and getting Big Ten back in the national title. Because I feel like the Big Ten schools felt they could have been they had a shot to go to the national championship and and even win it, but SEC again, another champions. They and because I feel like Georgia just again Kirby Smart really gone recruiting so well that it's going to be hard to, this is going to be another dynasty. Like SEC has two
Hmm.
dynasties because I don't see Alabama's dynasty still over. I mean, they had a hit. I mean, they had a hiccup. I feel like not going to the SEC championship because if Bama would have won against LSU, I feel like the SEC championship probably would have gone Bama, and then they would have been in.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think Georgia would have beaten them in Atlanta for the SEC title game. At least just in my personal opinion. I mean, I think it would have been a great game. They're one of the few teams that could actually hang with Georgia like on a consistent basis. But that's an interesting point because I don't know if you saw some of the clips of Nick Saban on the ESPN studio. Did you see him with like David? God, what's his name? David Pollock. David Pollock was just gushing about Georgia because he's a UGA alum, about how they're the new dynasty and stuff. But Nick Saban over there is just secretly seething because he's just because Nick Saban's hearing this and it's like, wait, I'm still here. We're still Alabama. I have 6 rings. I think Alabama is going to go into next year super underrated because Georgia now, they're going to be number 1. They're the new Bama, all that. Bama to me is going to be very interesting to watch next year because think about if you're Alabama, you're going into this next season. Georgia's now the dynasty. Tennessee's finally beaten you. Auburn now has Hugh Freeze. LSU beat you. You're kind of coming into next year a little bit limping, and you're going to come in with a new quarterback. That to me becomes a very interesting team next year because they're still going to be very talented. And they got to figure out who their quarterback's going to be. Are they going to go with Jalen Milrose, who did not look great this year in his playing time in the second half of Arkansas and Texas A&M, or do they go with the guy from West Tennessee, Ty Simpson, the guy who should have been a Vol if we didn't have Jeremy Pruitt ruining that recruitment? But I think we're going to be fine on that because we got Joe can throw 80 yards, Milton down the field. So I'm not too worried about that.
Viglia.
Yeah, and Nicholas Imiavelia. So like I'm not too worried about that, but still grew up a Tennessee fan, could have been a Vol, should have been a Vol, but regardless, we'll see him in Crimson, I guess. Yeah, Bama's gonna be interesting though. Because Nick Saban hasn't really been in a position like this in a very long time.
Oh yeah, I feel like the last time I feel Alabama was that underrated was probably when he came 08 season when he won his first national championship with Bama when he went number 1 and then he lost to Florida and then he lost the bowl game and then he come out strong and win the first of the 6 rings that he got on Bama. But the big question is quarterback. Who's going to be the starting because he went from Bryce look at how successful quarterbacks Bama had back to back was Jalen Hurts to Tua to Mac Jones to Bryce Young. So it's a lot of pressure who's going to be starting on because it was 4th consecutive, I guess, like really good quarterback. 3 of them you have in the NFL, like Jalen Hurts with the Phillies, you have Mac Jones with the Patriots, and Tua with Miami, and all their starters. So Nick got those 3 right. So and Bryce Young probably going to be the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I think Finney Justice should be the first pick. Of course, we'll see. Of course, we'll talk about that whole situation later because man, I got some stuff to say about that. But anyway, yeah, because there were clearly some serious issues with Bama this year. I mean, remember the Tennessee game? They had 17 penalties. That was super un-Alabama-like. Like, where did that come from? Like, Bama was always a very disciplined team, and this year they just weren't. I'm still waiting to see if they replace their coordinators. Bill O'Brien is rumored for several NFL OC jobs, including the Titans, by the way. So will they replace him? Are they going to replace Pete Golden? Fans have wanted him gone now for 2 years. So I think it is going to be really interesting to see how that program evolves because it feels like, because Nick Saban, think about this. In the early part of his run, he was traditional ground and pound defense. That's what won him his first couple of titles. Then around 2013, 2014, they kind of fell off a little bit, and he decided to radically change his offense to this up tempo spread offense, and that's how come they started picking up and winning a bunch of titles again, and became a lot more fun to watch in the process. Now it feels like you might have to go through one more transition. Um, and we'll have to see what it is. I think partially it has to do with NIL. I think Bama is kind of struggling in that department. Because I think NIL has equalized some of the other schools like Tennessee to Alabama in terms of what they can offer to recruits. And Bama just they have to kind of catch up with that before it really kind of causes them to fall off. Just take a look at Clemson.
I think what Bama's going to rely more than NIL is transfer portal. Like, I feel like Bama's going to go more to the transfer portal than to NIL, because NIL is basically what you sign 1 year, like, coming straight out of high school. So it's like fresh players who want to make like a buck now. Bama was going to look for opportunity. For example, how many Texas A&M players were in the transfer portal probably going to think go Alabama? So Bama's
I'll say this though: transfer portal is also also thinking about NIL. Like I just saw a story today where Auburn has taken a defensive lineman from Kentucky, and they're saying that this player is getting like $40,000 more in Auburn than he would have gotten in Lexington.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying NIL is not going to be using the transfer portal. I'm just saying Bama is going to try to get a player that got went to like Texas A&M for NIL, but doesn't see success under Jimbo Fisher. Try to lure the player, hey, come play for us. That was still a dynasty that you can have exposure, that you can play really well to go to the NFL. That's what Bama's going to try to find.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you want to play for the top program consistently over the past couple of years, play for a chance to go to the NFL, most people will think Bama, but now you have Georgia, and I think Georgia's going to dilute that just a little bit, just because now Georgia, they have back-to-back titles. They seem to be a program that's going to be here to stay for a while. I mean, yeah, but we'll see if Bama can counterbalance them.
Do you know what's funny? Like Kirby, what a coach Kirby Smart. Back-to-back champs. Did a great job as a coordinator for Nick Saban, but he lost at home to Butch Jones, Tennessee. How crazy is that to think about it? He lost at home to Tennessee under Butch Jones.
Yeah, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. That's all I gotta say. That and that took a miracle. Remember, it took the Dobnail boot. So because Butch Jones just started to lose that game, and Josh Dobbs bailed him out. So, yeah, he got lucky. Yeah, that's what he needed. He needed luck to beat good coaches, and that's why Butch Jones is no longer coaching at an elite level, and that's why he's probably going to get fired from Arkansas State next year because he sucks there too.
Yeah. Looking ahead of the 2023, an article I saw on the NCAA website, the way too early college football rankings for 2023. I guess the top four is the top four on the the national championship. But they dropped TCU really heavily. They have the. I don't see. I don't even see TCU on their ranking.
They're losing Max Duggins. I don't know if you saw the news. It's just broken the last hour, but they're losing their offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley. He is going to Clemson to be their offensive coordinator because Clemson has elected to fire their offensive coordinator. So they're losing their OC, losing their quarterback. Their offense will have to kind of restart next year. And remember, TCU does not recruit at a super, super high level. So they can't just reload like Georgia can, like Alabama can, like Ohio State can. This was a once-in-a-generation type team for TCU. Now, TCU, I think, is going to still be a really good program. I think they're going to be one of the top teams in the Big 12 moving forward, especially when Texas and Oklahoma leave. But let's be honest, this was probably a once-in-a-generation opportunity for them. And I feel really bad for them that the national title went like this because I really wanted them to, really put up a better fight than that. But still, I'm glad they at least got the shot, because it's just good to see smaller teams. And hopefully the next time we get a smaller team like that in there, we get a different result. Unless it's against Tennessee. But
Nick, with and I saw a lot of articles and pundits talking about it. When I first thought about the 12-team playoff, I thought it was going to expand the chances of the a team out of the Power Five or a football program, even with the Power Five conference that is not a first tier level, to be in a chess national title. But this new format, I think, is going to even makes even harder for smaller programs to get in. It's going to be easier for bigger programs because, like, in a 12, for example, in this new format, I think Alabama like some teams like Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan will always be in. They're always going to be in, no matter what happens. They can lose 2 games in the regular season, they're going to get in.
Yeah, like actually, I put together what that would have or what that would have looked like this year. So like this year, so the playoffs this year, if you had a 12-team playoff, would have been so your top 4 seeds. And remember, the all top 4 seeds that get a bye have to be conference champions. So you would have Georgia at 1, Michigan 2, you would have had Clemson at 3, and then you would have Utah at 4. So then TCU would have been the 5 seed in this
But
format and have to play in the first round. And then you'd have Ohio State at 6. You'd have had Bama at 7. You'd have had Tennessee at 8. And then they would have hosted Kansas State. Then Bama would have hosted USC. Ohio State would have hosted Penn State. And then TCU would have hosted Tulane. So that would have been your matchups. But I don't think TCU would have won 3 straight games to get to the national title in this format.
no, I only see Alabama, Ohio State, or Tennessee winning 3 games to win a national championship.
Yeah, because like how I think this would go, I think TCU. Well, I don't know TCU. I think TCU would beat Tulane. Ohio State beats Penn State. Bama beats USC. Tennessee beats Kansas State. So you've had Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Clemson, and then TCU, Utah. So I would say Tennessee, Georgia. I mean, I'm gonna have to be honest. I have to pick Georgia there. I picked Bama over Michigan. I'd pick Ohio State over Clemson. I'd pick TCU over Utah, and then you'd have had TCU, Georgia, and Ohio State, Alabama. So then you say Georgia, and then I don't know who you pick again from Ohio State, Alabama.
A big
I
Ohio State.
I probably would too. And then we already saw Ohio State, Georgia. So we kind of already saw. So we got to see what I think the national championship would have been in our timeline, but that was just the semifinal.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% agree with the list seeding the conference champions because I think conferences are way more unbalanced than they probably were 10 or 20 years ago. Because, for example, I think the SEC is in a league of their own. SEC, let's be real, Nick. SEC has way more football powerhouses than, let's say, the Big Ten. Because even with the Big Ten having USC and UCLA, I mean, USC is still, I think, a little bit behind in terms of being the top. That's why they couldn't make it the national championship because they just couldn't beat Utah, which lost badly to Florida. So, I mean, I feel like the commissioners of those conferences wanted that way to make it like winning a conference way more important than it is today. Because today is like you're just defending, like for example, Kansas State won the Big Ten, but TCU still got in, even losing their conference championship.
Yeah, and it would have been an interesting debate because Kansas State would have been the 9 seed going to 8 seed Tennessee. How many people would have tried to argue that Kansas State deserved to host that game because they won their conference title? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. So yeah, that's a good debate. Like Kansas State beat TCU. So they're gonna go from 9 seed to 4 seed, even though they lost more games than TCU. Let's say, for example. So you value more one game than all the regular season.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and then again, I feel like you almost see that sometimes in the NFL too. Like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Jacksonville Jaguars both get to host a playoff game this weekend, even though they both weren't great this year because of how divisions work. So you're always going to have a pitfall when it comes to a tournament system. I
Yeah.
feel like.
And weren't like NFL fans advocate every year that this seating format, doesn't, value like all overall regular season instead of like being good at your division, which sometimes there's like tougher divisions and weaker divisions. Like the South division, both like you mentioned, AFC and NFC South, they were very weak this year. Like let's argue, like let's compared to the NFC North and the AFC, the NFC North and the NFC East were both were really tough. Like almost all four teams on the NFC East were contending to the playoffs until the second to last regular season week, compared to the NFC South, where basically Tampa already won the division 3 or 4 weeks before the regular season was over, and all the other three teams were out by midseason.
Right, and some people, as you said, a lot of people say that's unfair, but other people say, well, the rules going into it. I mean, that's the case in like the MLB. There's AL Central, horrible division this year, but the Cleveland Guardians still got to go through to the playoffs. You have, I'm trying to think. I mean, the only division that really doesn't do it is NBA, but even in there, sometimes people are like, well, the Western Conference is way better than the Eastern Conference. So why does like the Detroit Pistons get to go in at the 8th seed when they wouldn't even be in the top 13 in the West? Some people say that you should only have the top 16 teams by record, period. There's no way to ever completely do it in a fair way, ever. Especially in a sport as complicated and diluted as college football. But the chaos is why we love it.
We love chaos. So chaotic. We love the. I mean, I never will forget how I loved the debate over the Ohio State getting in the 2020 season. That was the favorite debate, and because it was chaos, was a lot of factors that was like deserve to get in or deserve to get out. Because in college football, more than the pros, is more subjective than objective, because it's about resumes, and because in the NFL it's like if you win those games in the division, get in. But in college football, it's not that simple. You can have the same wins and the same losses, and from comparing one team to another, but it's a committee that still decides. So it's a lot of subjective instead of objective.
Yeah, and then outside of college football and outside of college sports, period, there's really no other sport like it. Every other sport is a record-based playoff format, except for college sports. And that's what makes it so different, because every single game matters, because any win could be a really good one that helps you get in the dance. Any loss could be a really bad one that keeps you out. And it's going to be interesting to see how teams recalculate how to approach their regular seasons. Because you think about next year is our last one with the 4-team format, and then next year we'll actually start with the 12-team format. So it's going to be it's going to be a lot of change. College football changing before our eyes, but I'm definitely excited to see it. And hey, as a Vol, I'm very excited to see next year's team. A lot of the preseason rankings have us verge top 10, and I think that's a decent, fair ranking to start. There's some of the teams are hyping up for next year. Interesting, like Florida State at 4 in the ESPN poll. That seems kind of crazy to me.
In the NCAA article, they have Florida State at 7 and Tennessee at 12. I think that's I don't know.
Wait, hold on. I gotta see it. I have to see that. 12. I want to see, who do they put over? So that's the ESPN ranking.
I have the NCAA. I'm sending it to you.
See, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Bama, Penn State. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. LSU. Okay. LSU has some talent returning. I don't know about them being top 6 though. Okay, Washington I can see. And Tennessee should be ahead of TCU and Utah. That's just facts.
But I don't agree with Florida State being number 7. I know they, of course, are way better than the previous years, but they're still not there yet.
Oh, I agree. I gotta see them win some. I know they beat LSU this year, but they gotta be more consistent in conference play. They lost 3 straight games this year to Clemson, probably the worst Clemson team we've seen in 7 years. They lost to Wake Forest, a team that completely collapsed, and NC State, who was highly overrated this year. like games that for an ascended team shouldn't have lost, and lost them all in a row. So I'm just and think about this: they were in a back and forth type match with Florida until the very end. I know Tennessee, was also in a time and forth match with Florida, but remember we were up by 17, and we kind of screwed up at the end and kind of let them get back in it and made it look a lot closer than it actually was. We were in control that entire game until the very end. Florida State was actually in a back and forth contest with Florida, and they barely beat a bad Oklahoma team this year. I'm not sold on Florida State next year.
No, I'm not there. I'm not sold either. I feel like they're they're way better. Let's say from 5 6 years ago,
Oh yeah.
but they're, I feel like, more on the top 15 kind of team, not top 10.
Yeah, and then Penn State. Yes, I know they won the Rose Bowl, but yeah, and I know they almost beat Ohio State, but they got absolutely draxed by Michigan. They're losing Sean Clifford, which I know some people say is a net positive, but still, you never know how the next quarterback's going to come in and play. So having them as a top 5 team to me is absolutely ridiculous as well. Um, so, but anyway, well, because I think I saw an interesting statistic. I think something like 15 teams in the final top 25 poll of the AP this year were not ranked in the preseason, which is a record. So, as it goes to show, preseason rankings do not matter. They're just fun to talk about, but the season will work itself out. And, we'll be back out of here in 8 months. So,
I mean, the thing that shows more that the ranking, the preseason rankings doesn't matter, is the 2017 Florida State, football program. They start number 2, and then they went 7-6, and they only got a bowl game because they found a way to make it up a game against Louisiana Monroe.
oh, yeah, I remember that. And that was really the start at the end right there for them. And they're just now coming back from that. So, it's good for them. So, but I'll have to see them prove it next year. They got to beat Clemson next year, like prove it. And Clemson just made a big hire of their own. They just stole TCU's offensive coordinator. I think I might have mentioned that earlier. I think that's a huge hire for them. And we'll see if they are able to fix their offense with Clay Klubnik as their quarterback because they got some issues there to fix. Real quick, while we're still on college football, Vols under some big transfers, namely Deontay Fortin from Oregon. Big play receiver, 6'5", can play slot, can play outside. Another receiver for Josh Heupel and offensive staff to play with. Offense, I think, is going to be just as good next year.
Yeah, I think Josh Heupel, he's a really offensive coach, and I think Joe Milton, if he kind of craft his mechanics and craft his throw, that we know how can he like really throw hard, but can he like tone it down,
I think we saw
kind of.
evidence that he did in the Orange Bowl. Like he only
Yeah,
had
yeah,
one or two big overthrows, so
yeah.
he's gone a long way.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Orange Bowl performance of Joe Milton kind of gave feel that the momentum will not stop after this magical season, which Tennessee finished number 6 in the AP poll, which was the highest since 2001. It's still a big achievement.
Oh yeah, I mean, just a phenomenal season. As I said, just outside of one night in Columbia, like we said last week. I mean, this season was just basically as perfect as it could be. Because I really think truly the only team in the country that was just straight up better than this was Georgia. I think we could beat anyone else in the country this year when we were playing well. So but you don't get brownie points for saying you were the second or third best team. You actually have to go out and win every single one of those games. And unfortunately, we kind of slipped up once and it threw off the entire season.
One thing that I don't see any people talking about, I think for the first time in a long time, Tennessee went undefeated at home.
Oh yeah. I mean, Neyland Stadium was just absolutely rocking. We haven't lost, and I think there's a good shot that we'll be undefeated at home next year until the Empire to the South comes up. Because we do have the biggest games we have in Neyland before Georgia. We have Texas A&M and South Carolina at home, and South Carolina. Yeah, South Carolina's going to be a revenge game. I'm excited for that. And Texas A&M, obviously, we know they have a ton of talent. But you saw how they played on the road this year. They were absolutely horrible. I think that I think they'll struggle against us in Neyland. I just kind of have a feeling about that. But if we can win both of those games, find a way to at least have only one loss by the Georgia game, because if we have to go to Bama, we do go to Florida. But as we'll talk about in a second, I'm not that worried about the Florida game next year. Um, that Georgia game's going to be an absolute just mauling atmosphere. Because I think Tennessee. I think no fan base is as irritated to see Georgia go back to back as Tennessee. I know I'm irritated. Living in Chattanooga, right on the Tennessee Georgia line, seeing all the Georgia fans be happy. Really had a news story the other day in our news station about Lad McConkey, the receiver. He's a local kid from here, from North Georgia, and obviously great for him and all that. But I'm so sick and tired of seeing Georgia fans happy going back to back on national titles. Someone's got to put a stop to them. And when you look at Georgia's schedule next year, the only game I truly think Georgia is going to lose next year, or could lose. I'm not saying they're going to, but the only game truly where I feel like they have a shot at losing is in Knoxville, because they're going to win every other game. And really the last stand to me is going to be Knoxville, Tennessee next year, at least in the regular season. And I'm very curious, can we find some way to break that defense? It's like the Berlin Wall. We have to find a way to knock that wall down.
I mean, yeah, I feel like it's all meant to be. I mean, didn't we knock down the wall of Alabama that took 15 years? Georgia is not that distant. It was like what, 7 years? Half of that.
Yeah. So this year will be 7 years. So last time I beat them was 2016. I feel like it's gonna be a lot more difficult because I think Bama just had a horrible defensive game plan and they didn't adjust for whatever reason. And plus, they had a lot of penalties, because I think Georgia is now what Bama was. So I think we can be good enough to beat Georgia, but we have to be playing at our absolute best. A lot of this is going to come down to how good is Carson Beck. And Carson Beck, from all indications, has a more prototypical NFL arm than Stetson Bennett. Like, he might be a better quarterback than Stetson Bennett. Hopefully, he doesn't have Stetson Bennett's luck gene. But we can't be sure of that. So it'll be a big game in there next year. But obviously, we have a lot of games before then. The Vols' first game is in Nissan Stadium over in Nashville against the Virginia Cavaliers. So that'll be an interesting game in its own right, because UVA, I'll say it's, I think Tennessee obviously is a lot better team than UVA, a lot better program. But that's going to be a team, that they're going to be playing with heavy hearts next year. Because they lost 3 of their teammates this year, and they canceled the rest of their season. I'm not gonna lie, that game kind of makes me nervous for that reason alone.
Yeah, me too. That's what I'm thinking. It's gonna be a very kind of getting back game.
Yeah, that game that makes me nervous just for that reason alone. That there's no other reason why we should lose that game to Virginia outside of that reason. So, we'll see what happens, but that's a long way. We have a long time to go. Also, we have I think it was Omar Norman Lott as well. And God, I forget who the third transfer is. But we had 3 transfers on Monday. They will all be, I think, big contributors to the team next year. And Gus, I don't know if you've seen what's going on in Gainesville, but this is an absolute mess. So they had a quarterback commit this year, Jalen Rashada. They got beat out Miami for him, but he was supposed to come into campus this week to start with as an early enrollee, but he hasn't shown up. And rumors are it's because Florida hasn't been able to deliver on their NIL deal.
Ooh.
So they might lose out on their stud quarterback. And remember, this is in an offseason where Florida has lost 26 players to the portal, and they've only brought in like 5. So Florida fans are in absolute meltdown mode right now. And they think Billy Napier might not be the guy. They want their AD fired. And they think that Florida now is going into the pits, and they're about to become what Tennessee was. I mean, it's just a wild to see Florida in such disarray.
I mean, when I remember that Florida and Tennessee had coaching searches probably around the same time. When Butch got fired, they also fired their coach, and they got Dan Mullen. Tennessee got Jeremy Pruitt. Then Dan Mullen got fired, I think was 1 year after Jeremy Pruitt, and they went to Bill Napier, and Tennessee got Josh Heupel. And it was so funny that probably the 2017 hire Florida got better, but this time Tennessee got the better hire.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I mean easily. And I think partially too, Tennessee has a much better NRL structure than Florida. And it just seems like there's a ton of drama down in Gainesville right now. There's all kinds of accusations flying around about stuff happening from the Florida fan base towards Rashada and perhaps his agent, and it's insane. So it's going to be an interesting story to watch because the Florida fan base right now is on fire. Some of them already want to fire Napier after 1 year. Yeah, it's quite hilarious to watch from a distance. And I'll say this: they're looking at starting Graham Mertz from Wisconsin as their quarterback next year. Um, I'm not scared of Florida next year. Tennessee has not won in the swamp now. This year will be 20 years since Tennessee's won in the swamp. I'm going to go on record right now and say Tennessee is ending that streak this year. We are winning in Gainesville.
And one thing I want to point out is I'm excited to see there's a Brazilian high school football player, Davi Belfort, son of the legendary MMA fighter Vitor Belfort. He's in the class of 2024, and I'm kind of intrigued where he's going. Tennessee made an offer along Alabama, Florida, Florida State, Miami. He's from Miami, but I mean, I'm imagine a Brazilian quarterback at Tennessee. I'll be so happy.
That would be awesome. That would be so cool. And obviously, if you're a quarterback, I don't know why you wouldn't want to go anywhere but Tennessee. I mean, Josh Heupel has proven that he can take any QB and have them put up big numbers.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's like if you want to play your best at that position, and maybe get your NFL stocks up, Josh Heupel is your guy.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. All right. Well, I guess let's head on over to the professional side of things as we close the storybook on the 2022 college football season. We'll miss it. Definitely a magical season for us as Vol fans. But now we turn our sights to the 2023 off season. But now it is time to focus on the NFL, the National Football League. And first and foremost, we want to acknowledge Damar Hamlin. What a miraculous recovery he has made. He is now out of the hospital. He's back in Buffalo, at home. And it's just awesome to see. He's back talking with the team. He was tweeting this last Sunday during all the games. It's awesome to see. We're just so glad he was able to make it out of that situation.
And having that, touchdown on the kickoff return, that was goosebumps. That was for Damar Hamlin. That was
absolutely. Yeah, Nyheim Hines going back to back, actually going with 2 kickoff returns in that game. Just absolutely incredible. That was straight out of a movie. The NFL script writers really outdid themselves on that one. In terms of investigation, I haven't heard anything about an investigation. It just seems like, maybe the hit itself briefly kind of just hit the heart at the wrong time. But I'll say this, I think the NFL overall, I think handled the situation as well as they could. Now, obviously the whole standing situation. So, the Chiefs have the number 1 seed now, kind of because the Bills lost their opportunity to defend the 1 seed. I think they would have lost that game personally. So I think the Chiefs were going to be the number 1 seed anyway. But it was announced today that if the Chiefs and Bills meet in the AFC title game, it would be in Atlanta. What do you think about that, Gus? Just how this whole situation has been handled, and the Chiefs and Bills having to play on a neutral site if it comes to that.
I think the NFL wants to avoid any argument of favoritism, or like, I think, since seeding is so vital in this game, of course, they made the right call by suspending the game. Of course, Damar Hamlin, situation affect heavily on the players' emotion. The game couldn't continue, but with that situation happening, the NFL had to figure out a way to, find a solution that wouldn't, make the game a bigger deal than it already was. So I feel like, and it was true on neutral side, because Atlanta is further from Kansas City and Buffalo it could be, and I feel like it's a perfect solution from that extreme unique situation.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how much tickets go for that game if that game happens, because it's only 2 hours for me. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Bills or the Chiefs, but man, I I mean, if I was offered a ticket to go see Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to go to that game. I would totally go to that game. But
Yeah, I think Atlanta football fans, are definitely gonna go for that game because, as you said, who doesn't want to watch a top two quarterbacks meeting? And if we all remember last season, how crazy that game was in the divisional
yeah,
round. Imagine
yeah, like, and that'd be so awesome because I don't have a rooting interest in the game. I'll just sit back and just watch the fireworks.
yeah, that's true because you don't have that, not connections. Like you don't have that emotion of want to win or lose. You're just enjoying a pure game of football on really good quarterbacking.
Yeah, I mean, just it would be just the highest quality of football. So, it'd be interesting to see how that happens. I think the Cincinnati Bengals though might have something to say about it. And I'll say this: out of this whole deal, they got screwed the most because they should. I think they would have been the 2 seed. I think they would have beaten the Bills, but they didn't. And now, if the Bengals and Bills win this week, the Bengals will have to go to Buffalo, which I think ended up being kind of unfair to them. But I guess they're just going to have to kind of suck it up and find the breaks and be able to overcome it.
Yeah, I know. It's again, we all wanted that game to fully concluded in Cincinnati, but God had other plans.
Yep. Yep, that definitely was not in the cards, but I'm just glad Damar Hamlin's all right. Hopefully he'll be on the road to full recovery, and it's kind of good to get back to some football on this weekend because it felt really dirty talking about football last week, but now it feels like since we know he's all right, he's going to survive. Now we can get back to the football field, and we have definitely some juicy football to talk about. I think the number one storyline of the weekend is Aaron Rodgers collapsing again in the fourth quarter and the Green Bay Packers losing to the Detroit Lions to be knocked out of the 2022 season. Gus, man, I mean, this is the third straight year. You go back to the Bucks back in 2020. You have the 49ers last year at home, and now the Lions here in the last regular season game to get into the playoffs, and they choked every single time. What's going on with Green Bay? Is this it for Aaron Rodgers? It's just insane to me.
As we discuss often, we discuss on our chat on WhatsApp. I feel like Green Bay is being hostage by Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers post game press conference on those 3 times is a lot of mixed messages, vague answers, and symbolism of the last time. Last time, like the Green Bay Packers are petrified of this situation. They should find a way to move on from Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I thought they were gonna do that with uh the not Trey Lance, the
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love pick. I thought, oh, okay, they found a replacement. Or they feel Aaron Rodgers has not been a mentor enough. They don't trust Jordan Love, and I mean, or they wanna still feel they still have the feeling that Aaron Rodgers are a viable quarterback to get to the to a championship, but Aaron Rodgers could even go to the playoffs, beating the Lions at home. Which, by the way, credit to the Lions because they were out when when the game started, but they still played their A off and really came out strong and win it.
Yeah, I wish the Lions hadn't started off so slow because they would have been a dark horse Super Bowl contender. I feel like. And if they had found their way into the playoffs, their defense was just so bad back in September, it prevented them from making the playoffs. But
what a great job by Dan Campbell! What a great job by turning around mid-season. I think the Lions they're gonna be viable if they keep the momentum. I think they even win the division because Minnesota again was funny. Lions were starting down and finish up. Minnesota, they're collapsing. I don't think they're gonna win on this, and I think that's gonna be my upset pick. I think I think Minnesota is gonna lose to the Giants.
I actually agree with you. I'm going to pick the Giants as well in that game because I think I said this a few weeks ago, I don't trust Minnesota Vikings. I don't trust Kirk Cousins in a playoff game. I don't trust this team. If you look at it, they've been skating by all year by bad teams. And I mean, they were literally down by 30 to the Colts at halftime. The Colts, who are horrible this year. It just, but yeah, I mean, the Lions right now, they would beat the Vikings right now if they played one-on-one. But yeah, Dan Campbell saved his job, and Jared Goff saved his job, because I thought Jared Goff was going to get replaced after this year. But no, he's going to be the quarterback next year in Detroit, and he played well enough to keep it. You know, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a great receiver, probably an underrated, maybe top 10 receiver in the league. Jamal Williams has turned into an amazing goal line running back. DeAndre Swift obviously is a great weapon in the open field. Alex Alonze on the defense is just a tenacious defender in a lot of plays. This team has really developed into something special, and they're going to be a playoff team, like you said. I really like what they're doing. The Packers are in a completely different situation. They have sold their soul for Aaron Rodgers, and it's completely fallen apart. I mean, just all the off-field nonsense about the ayahuasca juice and, whatever stuff. I mean, it goes back to the whole vaccine thing last year, and it's just Aaron Rodgers has always been about him. I mean, there's not to get too personal, but there's a reason why Aaron Rodgers has a reputation of being hard to deal with, and there's a reason why when you ask like Jordan Rodgers' brother about him, there's not a warm friendlies there, to say the least.
But my criticism goes more, in the off season, goes more to he doesn't go to OTAs. He doesn't try. Like, look how Brady in the off season during COVID really had secret practices, and compared to Aaron Rodgers, who even go to OTAs when you have rookie receivers that really need that rhythm before the season starts.
Oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers thinks he's too good for that. He's in Hawaii with Shailene Woodley. He's in Fiji or whatever, and I don't blame him for that. If I had $200 million, I'd be in Fiji too. But also at that point, I would retire and enjoy that $200 million. I don't know. It's just, I mean, Aaron Rodgers clearly is one of the greatest 5 to 10 quarterbacks of all time, but his own ego is the reason why he's not going to leave as the GOAT. Because he could have been the GOAT. He had GOAT potential, and he just, like, if you compare him to Tom, as you said, with Tom Brady, he goes up there, he works with his receivers, he takes pay cuts to make sure his team is as good as possible, and that's why he has 7 rings. He always plays within the system. Aaron Rodgers doesn't, and there's a reason why there's a 6-ring difference between them.
I mean, look how 2020, Aaron Rodgers played at home in the NFC Championship, where he had a terrific season, but still couldn't beat Tom Brady, which was under a new team, who struggled in the first half of the season. That game showed, who was the GOAT and who was the, want to be a GOAT that never achieved his full potential.
Oh, absolutely, and he's going to finish his career with 1 ring. I just don't see how he's ever going to win another one, whether with Green Bay or anywhere else. I don't think he's ever going to play anywhere else. I think he'll retire before he goes anywhere else.
But I mean, a lot of people again go back to comparison with Brett Favre, because even the stats from his last game were similar to the stats Brett Favre had on his last game as a Packer. But Favre still played for 2 teams before retiring, the New York Jets and the Minnesota Vikings. Do you see Aaron Rodgers playing for your other team? I only see him playing for San Francisco. I only see him playing for the 49ers.
I don't think the 49ers would want him, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now. I'm not saying what team wants him. I'm saying what team Aaron Rodgers wish to play.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams that would want him. I mean, as a Titan, I would take him. That'd be an upgrade at quarterback, if we're being honest. But I mean, I don't know how much of an upgrade at quarterback at this point from Ryan Tannehill, but it still would be an upgrade. Although at this point, I would rather just trade up for the number 1 pick. And of course, we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, I other teams would definitely want him, but would he want to go for that grind? I don't know. I definitely question whether or not how much he truly wants it at this point. So, yeah, just unfortunately, kind of a sad end here for Aaron Rodgers. and the Green Bay Packers. And of course, the Seattle Seahawks were the beneficiaries as they survived the Rams. Which, by the way, I'm so mad at Baker Mayfield for throwing that interception in overtime because, man, if he had completed that, we would have gone to Detroit Lions in the playoffs.
But I
But
think the Seahawks still deserved to get into the playoffs. I think they had more. I feel like overall they were more deserving if you look at overall picture in the playoffs than the Lions. I think the Lions is more like a feel good story, or more like, oh my god, they were really good in the second half. They beat their rivals on the road. But in terms of overall performance in the regular season, I think Seattle did deserve more. And also, really credit to Pete Carroll, getting Geno Smith to the playoffs and seeing
oh
Russell
yeah,
Wilson fall apart.
yeah. I mean, I saw this interesting stat. Um, Geno Smith was the only quarterback in the NFL this year to take every single offensive snap of his team. He took 100% of the snaps in 17 weeks. So definitely a big credit to him for being able to lead his team to the playoffs, especially after the way his career started in New York. Just a great story for him, a great feels good story for the Seattle Seahawks, and it definitely validated Pete Carroll for sure as an elite coach.
Because, this divorce was kind of like Tom Brady, Bill Belichick divorce. Of course, Tom Brady won that divorce, but it feels like you know, Pete Carroll is winning his divorce. So,
Oh,
y-
easy.
yeah, I feel like Russell Wilson. I don't know. I think Russell Wilson right now should be really pulling for Jim Harbaugh to be the coach.
Oh yeah, and I'll be honest, I think there's a better chance that Harbaugh goes to Indianapolis than he goes to Denver because he has that connection. He was a Colt. He has that connection with Jim Irsay, and I think going to Denver would kind of be scary because with Russell Wilson, you'd be expected to win right away. While if you go to Indianapolis, you'd get a rookie quarterback and you'd be able to have a little bit of time to develop him. And I think Harbaugh's more of a developer. Uh, and I just think that job would fit him better.
I mean, Hugh had advantage. Like, for example, when Pete Carroll came to the Seahawks, he had a lot of hits in the draft because he knows a lot about college football players. Because as a Michigan head coach, so I think that's true. Indianapolis and Indy has more draft capital than the Broncos.
Oh, for sure. And I think they might be in position to trade up. Because obviously our good friend Jason Warwick and I we were talking about this with the Bears getting that 1 seed, and we're gonna have to definitely talk about this here in a little bit. This whole one. In fact, let's get that out of the way real quick, kind of like before we transition to the Titans, because it's gonna keep on coming up. The Texans. What were they doing? Why would you win on Sunday when if you lose, you secure the number 1 pick and you can pick whatever quarterback you want for your future, but you go out and you win, you go for 2, you make it, and you fall to the second pick now, and now you got Chicago, a team that doesn't need a quarterback. They're probably going to trade out of that pick down, and you're going to get stuck with someone that's not Bryce Young, whether that's CJ Stroud or whoever else. And of course, Lovie Smith probably got fired for that reason.
I mean, CJ Stroud or Bryce Young are probably happy right now because who want to be a Texan? Ask Deshaun Watson about that toxic relationship.
Oh yeah. Of course, that was more Deshaun Watson's finish there. Of course, I think both of those two they look like great NFL prospects to me. So I mean, it's probably not as big of a deal, but still, I think it's important to have that number 1 pick there so you can make the choice more befitting for you. And now, if you're a Texans, you're kind of just on the whim of whatever happens with that number 1 pick. And the Bears, I'm just kind of curious here because I think they're going to trade out of it, but there's still a chance that they go for a defensive player like a Will Anderson or something. What would you do if you were Chicago?
I'll definitely address the O line. Draft a really, really good O line because that's something Justin Fields desperately needed because he had no protection this year.
Yeah, but still, I think you would be better off trading back and accumulating more picks so you can get more O linemen that way.
Yeah,
Because I
that's
don't think
true.
any O lineman's worth the number 1 pick. this year. So I think that's what the Bears are going to do. And because obviously, they don't need a quarterback. And then it just becomes the question of who gets the number one pick. And I think a team that should be seriously considering doing some business with the Chicago Bears happens to be my Tennessee Titans, because the collapse is complete. 7 straight losses. And hey, it was a good game Saturday night. It was a competitive game, and it really ended on a wild series of events with the Josh Dobbs fumble. I don't blame the loss on Josh Dobbs. I thought he played really well. Offensive line, like they were this entire season, absolutely horrible. The wide receivers, absolutely horrible. Those two position groups let the Titans down on Saturday night like they did all year. Especially guys like Dennis Daly. I don't know how this guy's on the NFL field. He shouldn't be on the NFL field ever again. I don't know if he would start for the Georgia Bulldogs. Honestly, I'll be real. I'm sad if any football season ends, but I'm less sad when certain football seasons end. Like 2020 Tennessee football. I was happy to see that season go. Not in terms of our partnership, in terms of getting able to go into the press box and stuff. I was happy not to watch that football team again. I'm very happy I never have to watch the 2022 Tennessee Titans again, because that was atrocious and very hard to watch this entire season. That offense was archaic, unwatchable at times, aggravating, didn't make any sense. And thankfully, Todd Downing was fired for his efforts, along with the offensive line coach, secondary, linebacker, special teams.
You name it.
Yeah. They are cleaning house, which Mike Vrabel is the last man standing. And I think he deserves a second chance. I don't put this all on him, but, he better make some good decisions here, because if he kind of screws us up again and gives us more bad teams moving forward, because here's the thing, I'm anticipating that we're going to have to go through a rebuild. And I'm okay with that, because let's be honest, we had a Super Bowl window, and it ended when Evan McPherson hit that kick last year to beat us in the division round. It ended then, and John Robinson was an idiot and didn't re-sign A.J. Brown. That's where the championship window ended. So we got to rebuild from those mistakes. I think one of those things you really will have to consider is, if you're in a rebuild and you're going to have to restart the offense, I think you got to restart over with a new QB. A QB that's going to be dynamic, a QB that's going to give you chances to be successful moving forward, because Derrick Henry, he's getting older. And I still think, I'll say this, it doesn't seem like it if you watched it every single week, but Derrick Henry still had like 1,600 rushing yards. And he was rushing behind the worst O-line in the league. So I still think, all things considered, he had a really good season, and the Titans won as many games as they did because of him. But he's getting older. You're not going to be able to depend on him as much moving forward. I think our ground and pound model is going to become obsolete completely. And it became obsolete. We didn't score more than 27 points in any game this year. You got to find a way to get a quarterback that can extend the field. And Ryan Tannehill just isn't that guy.
I felt bad for Joshua Dobbs on Saturday, because I feel like I was rooting for him, because he probably was his best shot of remaining in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to keep being a Titan, maybe a backup, but and as you said, I think the Titans window was really, really open in 2021, and that horrible fourth quarter performance by Ryan Tannehill shut down. And I think the rebuild probably is going to be, and it's going to be harder, because again, Tennessee still does not have a general manager for this upcoming draft. So
we have to address that soon. Obviously, we'll just have to wait and see when that gets filled. But Amy Adam Strunk and Mike Vrabel need to get that figured out quickly, because the next step will have to be, okay, now what do we do with this draft? Right now you have the 11th pick. Not the best pick in the world, not the worst pick in the world. I think you got to trade up. I think you got to find a way to go bold here. Because Malik Willis ain't it. I'm sorry. I know he's only had 3 starts. He was only a rookie this year. I mean, Josh Dobbs came in with 8 days of the playbook and threw for more yards in one game. I'm sorry. Malik Willis is not it. You got to figure out something with the quarterback situation moving forward. And I think you got to find a way to draft a quarterback high enough. That's not Will Levis. Do not draft Will Levis. Please do not draft Will Levis. Um, this is why I desperately want the Tennessee Titans to trade up to the number 1 pick. I don't know exactly what would have to do, what would have to give to Chicago. Short of trading Derrick Henry himself, or maybe like a Kevin Byard or Jeffrey Simmons, you can keep those free players off the board. I think any other player, any other pick, I would put that up all on the table. Chicago, here's what, take whatever you want. I want the number 1 pick. I want my quarterback of the future.
I mean, as I feel like because you're giving so much hate for Will Levis, I think he's gonna do better in the NFL. I think you're the opposite jinx. He is gonna throw. He is gonna have a. Go ahead.
I mean, hey, I've missed some NFL quarterbacks before. I thought Josh Allen wouldn't be that good to come out of college. I will admit it. I didn't think Justin Herbert would be that good coming out of college. And then I've been saying for years that Bennett wasn't that good of a college quarterback. And I'm not, there's a reason why I'm not a coach. These are just my personal opinions. Maybe Will Levis will be a good NFL quarterback. And I will just, give up forever. And hey, if it turns out the Titans draft him, he turns out to be an amazing quarterback for the Titans, I'll be a big Will Levis fan. But I just don't see it.
Oh yeah, I still have a long ways to go into the NFL draft in April. And in terms of the order, so let's recap. So the Chicago Bears got the number 1, Houston Texans number 2, Arizona number 3. Also interesting because Arizona definitely does not need quarterback because they are locked in with Kyler Murray. So I wonder what they're gonna do with the number 3 pick.
Will Anderson, because if you think about it, J.J. Watt retiring, you need a new edge rusher. Boom, perfect fit.
So the number 4 is the Colts. So I guess the Texans and Colts are the 2 teams who need quarterback because I guess Matt Ryan's not the answer. Let's be clear about that.
And I think out of all teams, it's most likely that the Colts will trade up to number 1. It's more likely that they will than the Titans. That's just me being frustrated with the offense. It may not actually be the wisest thing for the Titans to do. That's just what I want to do, personally.
Yeah. So number 5 and number 6 are interesting because those were the trades that were like the big trades. The Seattle Seahawks are number 5 because they trade the Russell Wilson trade. Denver was really bad. I mean, who would have thought in the Seattle they would have get the number 5 pick because Denver was so horrible? Who would have thought?
Yeah, and then they're the ones that go into the playoffs. So they got to go to the playoffs, and they're still getting a number 5 pick. I mean, it's really cool. It's really interesting here, too. It depends on who falls to the spot.
Yeah.
How long do they anticipate Geno Smith being their guy?
I'm not sure. I think Geno Smith kind of same situation Ryan Tannehill. I don't think he's a long-term solution.
Yeah, so they could go quarterback, maybe.
And the number 6, I mean, Detroit Lions, of course the Rams, they had indication they weren't going to be as good, but I didn't expect them to fall apart. But the Lions, I don't think they're going to go for quarterback. I think they probably going to go for more like a wide receiver or O-line.
I could see defensive back for the Lions. I think that if there's any weaknesses, probably their secondary. I know it played a lot better towards the end of the year, but still, I think there's a lot more building they could do on that side of the ball.
So the Las Vegas Raiders got the number 7 pick, which they're figuring out the quarterback situation after benching Derek Carr, and they're probably going to try to have a trade in this off season. And Derek Carr has a no trade clause, so he has a kind of pick where he can go.
Yeah, and that's also going to be really interesting too with the quarterback situation. Where is he going to go? It feels like a team like the Jets would be a natural fit for Derek Carr. That's the first team that comes to my mind when I think of Derek Carr being traded to.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, but I don't be skeptical if I am their car because it's a defensive coach and they just fired their offensive coordinator. So how much you want to go for a team that has all the question marks about their offense?
But I mean, there's a lot of great skill players here. You got Garrett Wilson, a very young, talented wide receiver. You have a God, what's his name? Corey Davis, solid receiver for a lot of years. You have Brees Hall coming back from ACL, a great young, talented running back. With Michael Carter, a solid running back. Literally, the Jets have all the skill positions you'd want. Their problem was they didn't have a quarterback, and if they can just have a quarterback, that offense is going to be really good.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I see more Derek Carr trying to go to a team like the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins way more appealing than the Jets because the Dolphins
I
are.
think the Dolphins are still on Tua though.
I don't know. I don't know if they're. There's a lot of health questions about Tua, not only concussion wise, but he's a like an injury prone player.
Yeah, I mean that's also very true. And it definitely just depends on how they do. Also, too, a team that could play into this is maybe the Ravens. If they lose Lamar Jackson.
Oh, that's true. The Lamar Jackson drama still holds on. It's still a lot of question marks.
Oh yeah, I mean the question is, are we going to see Lamar Jackson this weekend? Is the other question.
That's what I don't
But
understand. Like, why there's like, is it like the contract situation?
that's what it's starting to sound like. I mean, and then again, they say it's the knee is the reason why he's not playing, and that very well might be true. But I mean, I feel like if he were fully into the Ravens, he would maybe try to still play in the playoffs, find a way.
Yeah. So it's
Um,
gonna be a lot of big questions to this draft. So just to finish up, Atlanta Falcons got the number 8. The Panthers got number 9. Philadelphia Eagles got the number 10 because of the trade with the New Orleans Saints. Your Tennessee Titans got the number 11 pick. The Houston Texans still have the number 12 pick because of a trade with because of the Deshaun Watson trade. The New York Jets have the number 13 pick. The New England Patriots have the 14th pick, and the Green Bay Packers had the 15th pick, and the Washington Commanders the 16th pick. The Steelers have the number 17, and the Detroit Lions had the number 18 pick.
yeah, and the Lions they're kind of in a similar spot to where the Titans were back in like 2017 because we had like the number 5 and the number 18 picks that year, and that was right before the Titans got really good as well. So um, the Lions might be on a similar trajectory when you look at their draft positions.
That's true. I mean, there's so much you can do about it. I think the Texans also have a lot of leverage because they have a two top 10 draft picks, the number 2 and the number 12.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to think about and see what transpires this offseason. But we're not at the offseason yet. We still have some football to be played. It's the NFL playoffs. It kicks off here in 2 days on Saturday afternoon. So let's go through it. We'll go through it one game at a time. And starting off,
Conference wise,
I was going to go by the schedule, but let's go conferences. That's easier. Which one do you want to start off with, AFC or NFC?
let's go with the NFC. Let's go to the NFC because they start on Saturday.
Yeah, let's
Early.
go NFC. So the first NFC game, you have the 7th seeded Seattle Seahawks at the 2 seed San Francisco 49ers. Geno Smith getting his first ever playoff start versus Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Very interesting match here. NFC West, these typically are hard hitting games in the playoffs. Here, though, I think the 49ers are going to win, and they might win pretty big. I think the Niners are a lot better of a team, especially at home.
Yeah, but they're gonna have to beat Seattle for a third straight time. But I mean, it's Brock Purdy versus Geno Smith. I still feel like, Sean, I still feel that the 49ers still comes out stronger. I think, yeah, I don't. I think Seattle are not there yet. Give me the 49ers.
I'd agree with that. Um, all right. Also in the NFC, on Sunday afternoon, we have the number 6 New York Giants and number 3 Minnesota Vikings. We've already both alluded to us both taking the New York Giants, but what would that take? Obviously Daniel Jones is his first playoff appearance. Saquon Barkley is his first time in the playoffs since he was a rookie. I think Daniel Jones will have to play smart football, not turn over the ball, but I think he's going to do so. And I think he's going to do so at the expense of Kirk Cousins making a couple of mistakes, a couple of turnovers.
I mean, it's Kirk Cousins on the big spot. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he. I feel like if he loses this game, I think Minnesota will be ready to move off him because then he'll definitely will prove he's not a big game kind of quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is make or break for Kirk Cousins. He's got to find a way to win this game at least, and then you'd probably have to go to San Francisco to really prove yourself out on the West Coast. And then Monday night, this is probably the most interesting game of the weekend. Cowboys, Buccaneers. The Cowboys were just horrible last weekend at the Commanders, getting absolutely run off the field by Sam Howell and the Commanders. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers on Tom Brady, they've limped into this game at 8-9. Not a great season, but Tom Brady, most clutch player in the postseason. The Dallas Cowboys, least clutch organization in the postseason. Can the narrative change here for the Dallas Cowboys?
Give me the Cowboys. I feel like Dak Prescott's gonna come out strong. Mark McCarthy probably kind of rested his team. I think the Cowboys are finally gonna get that big playoff win that the fans are dying for.
I'm going to pick the Buccaneers. I do not believe in the Dallas Cowboys. They'd make some of the dumbest mistakes I see in the NFL. Some of the time management decisions I've seen in the past few weeks make no sense. And then Dak Prescott is a turnover machine. I know the Bucs, they aren't great on offense. Their defense is taking a bit of a step back. But I think this is the type of game that the Bucs can muddy up, make really dirty, make really low scoring, and find a way to sneak out and win. And I don't trust the Dallas Cowboys in that type of football game because their defense has fallen apart recently. Their defense has given up big numbers to some not so top tier quarterbacks in the league. I don't trust the Dallas Cowboys. Give me the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if Tom Brady makes another divisional round with this Buck, I feel like it will make his value even more because I think he's gonna also move on. I don't think he's gonna stay in Tampa next season.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. The that I would definitely say that winning. I definitely would say winning this round for the or winning this game would be huge for Tom Brady. Again, just obviously, it's not in terms of anything to prove because he already has 7 rings. I mean, he has nothing else to prove, but still to win playoff games at the age of 45, I mean, it is unprecedented for any quarterback in the league. That would just be just insane just to think about him still winning playoff games at this stage in his career. And think about the way that we've projected this out. If the Giants were to upset the Vikings, the Giants would head to the Eagles, and then the Brady would get to go play San Francisco.
Whoa!
Which that would be just an awesome storyline, right there.
Yeah, he never had to face San Francisco in a postseason
He has not.
Because he spent 2 decades in the AFC.
Yeah, and none of the times we went to the Super Bowl with the Patriots, the 49ers were the team on the opposite side. So that would just be, and that's definitely a game I've wanted to see it because we've seen Aaron Rodgers versus San Francisco a ton because that was also Rodgers' favorite team growing up, and Rodgers has struggled a lot against San Francisco, but Brady against San Francisco would be very fascinating.
But imagine this, and there's a chance that happening if Seattle Giants and the Buccaneers all win, Tampa Bay will face New York. So the Brady have to face the team that beat him twice in the postseason in the Super Bowl.
That would also be insane, but I mean, I don't see that happening, but that's not impossible. Yeah, and plus, that would give them an extra home game. Could you imagine an 8-9 team getting 2 home playoff games?
I know we have to take two road teams to win it, but there's always a chance of that happening. But I feel like the storylines are all kind of ready, and even if all home teams win, it's going to be Cowboys and Eagles. What a matchup that's going to be.
Yeah, for Dak Prescott, that feels like a legacy game right there, and for Jalen Hurts, for both quarterbacks, there that'd be such a big game for both of them.
Well, that's
But it'd be bigger for Dak, I think.
yeah, definitely big for Dak.
Yeah. I guess do you want to would you want to pick out the rest of the NFC just to see? All right. So like in your bracket you would have Vikings at Giants and or Vikings at the Eagles and have Cowboys at the 49ers. So who do you think would go to the NFC title game from there?
So yeah, let me. So my bracket will be Seattle going to the Eagles and Buccaneers and the Giants. That would my no.
Wait,
No, no,
no.
no, no.
No, it'd
My
be Giants at Eagles and it'd be Cowboys at 49ers.
Oh, that's true. So give me Cowboys and the 49ers. Oh no, Cowboys and the Eagles.
Ooh, so Cowboys Eagles NFC title game. Who would win that NFC title game?
Cowboys. I'm gonna be kind of like a brave and fine kind of guy.
Wow. That would be crazy. Shout out Draven Fine. Man, could you imagine the ratings that the Cowboys Eagles NFC title game would get though?
It would
That
be
would be it would be so insane. Um, I hope that's the NFC title game because that'd be such a good game. Um, anyway, for me, I'd pick Eagles over Giants, and I would pick the 49ers over the Bucks. And then I would pick the 49ers over the Eagles in the NFC title game. So you have the Cowboys going to the Super Bowl. I have the 49ers going to the Super Bowl. All right.
We'll see
Let's
what's
head
happening.
over. Let's go to the AFC. So the first AFC game is Saturday night in Jacksonville, not the San Diego Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's 2007 again. Yeah, So we see Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence both for the first time in the playoffs. Very excited match here. Who do you think comes out on top in their first playoff game?
Give me Jacksonville. They're on the 5-game winning streak. I think Chargers have a lot of holes in their offense. I think give me Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville is going to go for the divisional round.
This is a tough one because I think Los Angeles was really stupid last week. They shouldn't have played their starters, and they lost. God, I forget who they lost to injury last week. It wasn't Keenan Allen. It was Mike Williams. They lost to injury last week for no reason in a game they did not have to play their starters. And the Chargers, you just know deep down you can never really trust them because you know that they're going to go out there and make a stupid decision. And they're going to make stupid like fourth down calls, and they're going to find a way to play themselves out of a game. And I think Trevor Lawrence has had a lot of confidence. He's found a lot of confidence. He has really grown as a quarterback. That defense has gone really good in Jacksonville. The ball's going to be rocking. I really like Jacksonville here too. I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's going to be probably one possession or even a field goal difference.
Yeah. So the other two AFC games are on Sunday. So Sunday afternoon, the Miami Dolphins with Skylar Thompson starting at quarterback because Tua Tagovailoa still has not been cleared to return. Going to the Buffalo Bills, the number 2 seed. This one to me might get ugly.
It's going to be similar to when the Patriots went to Buffalo last season. I think it's going to be the same out.
Yeah, I think Bills are gonna win big. I mean, the last Miami Buffalo game was awesome. It went down to the wire, but that was with Tua. I, I don't see them winning with Skylar Thompson.
I feel like the Buffalo Bills are relief because if it was the Steelers, was gonna be tougher. I think the Steelers was gonna give up more harder time than the Miami would have give was gonna give.
Oh yeah. I mean, Miami did not deserve to defeat the Jets on Sunday. They got very fortunate, and the way that things broke for them. But they're limping into the postseason as much as any team as I've seen in a long time. They kind of remind me of the Steelers from a couple of years ago in 2020, and I think you could see a similar outcome.
I mean, can you believe that 2020 Steelers? They were undefeated until week 12.
Yeah, and then they were down 28-0 at the end of the first quarter against the Browns. So, yeah, life comes to you fast in a hurry. The last AFC title game, AFC playoff game this weekend, you have the 6th-seeded Baltimore Ravens staying in Cincinnati to number 3 Cincinnati Bengals because literally we just saw this game a few days ago. We're out to see it again. The question is, will Lamar Jackson play? Right now, it's trending towards probably not. So you're probably going to have Tyler Huntley, a quarterback. With that information, I don't see Cincinnati losing this football game. Because Jamar Chase said that he felt a bit disrespected by some of the actions that the Ravens players were taking on Sunday. So it seems like the Bengals are going to be very fired up. I think they're upset about the way things were handled after the Bills game. They referenced the coin toss a couple of times. Joe Mixon had the coin toss celebration. I think they're upset they're going to have to go to Buffalo next week more than likely. But I like the Bengals here.
Yeah, I like the Bengals too. Give me Cincinnati. I think this QB situation definitely puts the Ravens kind of in disadvantage. I feel Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson, that would be like an even matchup. Then I think Joe Burrow comes out strong, and the Bengals will go back to another AFC divisional round.
Yeah, so for us, we both go chalk here. So all home teams win. So both of our division rounds, we would have the Jaguars at the Chiefs, and would have the Bengals at the Bills. And could you imagine if we get that game just after what happened a couple of weeks ago, just how anticipated that match would be? It'd be super,
But it'll be
super.
Buffalo this time.
Yeah. So who do you think would advance out of the AFC in your scenario?
Bengals and the Chiefs.
Ooh, so that game would actually be in Kansas City. So AFC title game, Bengals at Chiefs.
How about you?
I am going to go with the Chiefs at home against Jacksonville, but I'm going to go with the Bills. I think at home the Bills will defend Ralph Wilson Stadium or whatever they call it now.
Arrowhead.
Yeah. So I actually have the Bills Chiefs in Atlanta, the neutral site game. And I am going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I think they're about to go on a very inspired run here to make it to their first Super Bowl since the 90s. So you have Chiefs, Bengals, and Arrowhead. Who wins that game?
Give me
the rematch of last year's AFC title game.
Chiefs. Give me Chiefs.
So you got the Chiefs getting their revenge. All right. So for your Super Bowl, you have Chiefs versus Cowboys. Who do you think wins that Super Bowl?
Give me the Cowboys.
Ooh, Cowboys as the Super Bowl champs. For me, I have the Bills and the 49ers. I like the Buffalo Bills. I really do think, when you look at their team, they're very well balanced. And now I think they have a lot of motivation to play for. I like Buffalo to win it all. So you have Dallas. I have Buffalo as Super Bowl champions. We'll have to revisit these predictions in a couple of weeks when we get to Super Bowl time.
But I think it's going to be a really interesting weekend of football. I think probably going to be one or two lopsided games. I think it's going to be a really close games.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be a very exciting. I'm actually putting it down in our script what our picks were, just so we remember.
So I picked Cowboys, and
Whereas,
yeah, Chiefs Cowboys.
and I have Bills 49ers, and I think Buff wins. So we'll be curious to see who was more correct here in a few weeks. But it's going to be a lot of fun watching Wild Card Weekend, or Super Wild Card Weekend, I might add, will unfold. All right, and some other topics on the hardwood. So kind of some crazy situations happening here. First one was Chris Beard. I don't know if we've really talked about that situation or not. He got arrested for domestic assault, and I guess the situation has gone so severe that Texas has decided to fire him, which is just crazy. Remember, because Texas went to Texas Tech, they stole him from an in-state team. It looked like Chris Beard had Texas on the right trajectory. They were literally number one at one point this year, but off the court situation there ended his tenure. Um, is this the end for Chris Beard? Because obviously he's had a great track record as a coach on the hardwood, but obviously, you got to have integrity off the court, and this whole situation is not good for him.
Yeah, of course, it's gonna derail his career. Probably gonna be a step back, but it's gonna be interesting who the Longhorns are gonna pick because there are some rumors, and even some fans address that rumors. You saw that kind of situation. I mean, of course, we're gonna talk about Kentucky, but what happened in Rupp Arena?
Oh my God, yes. Good segue into this because yesterday or Tuesday night during the Kentucky South Carolina game, there's a fan who snuck in a "Take Coach Cal to Texas" sign and got kicked out of the game because of that. And that kind of segues perfectly into what a lot of Kentucky fans are feeling like, who have had enough with John Calipari because the Kentucky Wildcats have gone off the rails. If you look at the past two games, they lost to Alabama by 26 in Tuscaloosa, their worst loss ever to the Crimson Tide in school history. And then they proceeded to follow that up with a home loss to South Carolina, who was 241st in the net rankings and had just lost to the Tennessee Volunteers this past Saturday by 43 points. And some things have come out today about how like the assistant coaches don't even watch film. It's their grad assistant that watches film, and Coach Cal is not, the locker room is not together. Oscar Tshiebwe said in the press conference that he wants walk-ons to play because at least they'll show some fight. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Kentucky sports radio the past couple of days because it is hilarious when you have got Kentucky fans crying on the radio because they just cannot handle their team being this bad. Man, it's just been insane listening to Kentucky basketball being in this state. And as some of them say, and this might be true, they might be the worst team in the SEC right now.
I mean, it's just this was happening when you give lifetime contracts to coaches. You just don't do that. You're locked in with a coach that clearly has expired. Like maybe Coach Calipari can coach somewhere else, but definitely it feel like his time is done in Kentucky. But it's like a waiting game. Like Kentucky wants to see if Coach Calipari, you know, asks for a resignation or find some other team, while Coach Calipari is like he has a lifetime contract. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, you can't afford to fire him. Like the buyout's like $43 million. No basketball program makes enough to justify that buyout. Not even Kentucky. And I think the main problem is that offensive scheme they run is just not. It's just not modern enough. It's stuck 10 years ago, back when it was really effective, and it feels like they don't really adjust it. And it feels like they're great college coaches that constantly win championships. They're constantly finding themselves in Final Fours. They're constantly adjusting. And there's a reason why Calipari, despite having number one recruiting class after having number one recruiting class, only has the one national championship and constantly is losing in March. Or these days, not even getting to March, because this year on the track they're on a tournament team right now. and they're going to have to find a way to win some big games to get back onto tournament time. And it's just outside of Oscar Tshiebwe, they have no one else they really trust on the opposite end of the court. And defensively, it just feels like they're not giving 100% effort. I mean, South Carolina was just booming from three all night, and they had no answer for it. Just really, really poor showing from Kentucky on their home court.
And it's like Kentucky basketball is like a blue blood, and they see North Carolina and Duke, which were their rivals, still being contenders, and they're pretenders.
Yeah, and then if you're Kentucky, you look just 3 hours south, and that football school, who for the longest time didn't really care about basketball, they're now number 5 in the country. They're the second ranked in KenPom, and they right now are 4-0 in SEC play. And you have to go there on Saturday, a place where you struggle to win most of the time. In fact, I got to look this up in Kentucky, Tennessee basketball history. How many times have they? What is their record in TBA over the past 10 years? Because it feels like Kentucky has lost more than they won in TBA.
I
Because they've lost in TBA and lost.
I remember some memorable games. Like I remember it was like back was 2017 where they were highly ranked, and Tennessee was like probably first second year of uh, of Coach Barnes. That was a memorable. That was a game, a very memorable game.
Yeah. So we beat them at home in 2017 and 2018. Beat them at home in 2019. They did beat us home in 2028, 2021, but then we beat them last year at home. So that's 4 out of the last 6 years in TBA. That's actually 5 out of the last 6 years if you count 2016. So 5. So Tennessee is 5-2 at home since 2016 against Kentucky. Really, actually, if you think about it, 6-3 since 2013 against Kentucky and Thompson-Boling Arena. Knoxville is a city of nightmares for the Kentucky Wildcats. And when you look at this game, and also consider this too, Chris Lofton's jersey is being retired on Saturday. We are retiring Chris Lofton's jersey. It's going to be a rocking atmosphere at noon on Saturday. Of course, we always show up for the Kentucky game. This is going to be a hard game for Kentucky. And Tennessee obviously has, right now, according to KenPom, the best defense in the entire country. You do have to give Vanderbilt credit for their game on Tuesday night. They actually came out and shot really well. They actually had a lead at halftime. Fortunately, the Vols were able to make some adjustments and came out and played a lot better in the second half and won that game by a decent margin. They won by 9, but they were up by double digits for most of the second half. And obviously, you never want to take any game for granted. But I will say this. I don't know if I've ever felt this confident before a Kentucky game before.
Yeah, I feel like, and that's probably going to give a lot of feel to the Wildcats. They're going to go as an underdog. So that kind of reminds me of the 2020 game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that can be dangerous. Because Kentucky could show up. They still obviously have a lot of talent. They have the reigning National Player of the Year. So obviously Tennessee's going to have to show up. They're going to have to play hard. But I'm not necessarily worried about that because this team comes out and they play hard every single year. I mean, Rick Barnes, addressed this, I believe, last week about how this time last year he was struggling to find leaders on this team. And now there's a ton of leaders on this team. And they hold each other accountable. And I hope that's a trait that helps us not just on Saturday, but helps us as we get closer and closer to the ever-important month of March because, let's be honest here, this might be Tennessee's best shot at a deep run. When we look at this roster, what they're able to do defensively, and they're getting better on the offensive side of the court, if Tennessee's ever going to do it, it's now. It's this year. So, games like Saturday just give you more opportunity to get ready for March Madness.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's the kind of year that Tennessee has to prove they can go at least to the Final Four. At least Final Four.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, obviously, I won a national title, but we've never been to a Final Four in our program history. We need to get that monkey off our back. It's like beating Alabama this year. If we could beat Alabama in football, basketball can go to the Final Four. So, that's what that feels like. It's going to be tough, obviously, but It'll be quite interesting. Um, and I guess before we head to NBA real quick, just Lady Vols playing right now. Scores only 8-5 Lady Vols over Texas A&M with a minute left in the first quarter. Not a lot of scoring there, but not
And,
really
and
much.
game day is coming to Knoxville again now for the Lady Vols facing UConn.
Oh yeah, that and the UConn, they've been struggling with injuries and stuff. That's a game that Tennessee can absolutely win. UConn literally had to cancel a game recently because of injuries.
I remember when they came in 2021. It was a really remarkable game. Tennessee was that really close to win. Really good, really close.
Man, UConn is it's that game in women's basketball that feels like a game in any other sport because it's just like UConn Tennessee is the rivalry in women's college basketball. So I'm
Yeah.
excited that we're playing that on a yearly basis again.
Oh, that's true. Gino Ariema and Pat Summit, they are the cornerstones of coaching in women's college basketball.
Yeah, and they didn't particularly like each other very much.
Oh yeah, a lot of heated. I remember when I talked to Gino about the rivalry, and he was very, pick about it.
Oh yeah, but hey, they are the two best ever in their sport for a reason, and Don Staley's finding her way up into that conversation herself. But we're about to be it's 8-7 with 50 seconds left. Tennessee's gonna have to be better than that if they're gonna beat UConn. Man, they missed another shot. They certainly struggle at times in the offensive end this year, but yeah, I guess all I have on college basketball on the NBA. I'll be honest, I haven't really kept up with that as much over the past week.
I mean, Kevin Durant is injured, so that's a concerning for the Brooklyn Nets because I feel like they were in a good trajectory, they're winning a lot of games, but I think with the injury by Kevin Durant, I mean, they won 9 of the last 10 games, so I think they're going to finish strong in the East. But the question is, are going to be viable for the playoffs? They're currently playing right now the Boston Celtics, so it's the number one versus the number two seed team, the number one versus the number two team in the East. The Nets are currently down by 8 with still 9 minutes to play in the fourth quarter. But I'm surprised by my New York Knicks, number 6. They're playing really you know well recently. I feel like they're gonna make another run for the playoffs, but I don't know how deep the Knicks can go. They had a really good game against the Pacers, won last night, but it's still a lot of big questions for the New York franchise. On the West, the Lakers are still struggling. They're still out, even the playing. If the Lakers doesn't make the play-in this year for the second year in a row, what's what's LeBron's deal? Is he gonna be still keeping? Is Are they still want to be in that mess, or is he gonna bail like he did in every other situation like that?
I mean, part of me says he's gonna bail, but at the same time, he has so much like entertainment ventures and stuff that he has in Los Angeles. And I think Los Angeles is where he wants to be, just has in a life since. So I don't know if he just wants to leave LA for that reason alone. Um, Also, when I noticed about the West too, how about the Sacramento Kings right now? The 4th seed in the West. They might make their first playoffs since 2005. What a turnaround for them. Um, very excited. I've seen some of the clips of their home court. They are absolutely rocking over there in the Golden City of the Golden State. You have Harrison Barnes, you have Sabonis, you have De'Aaron Fox. They're all contributing to make the Sacramento Kings into a much better team this year, finally for the first time in a long time. And of course, the Warriors. They were struggling. They had some injuries, but right now they're the number 8 seed, and that's a dangerous team. You can never count out the Golden State Warriors as long as they have Curry, as long as they have Klay Thompson and Steve Kerr as their head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I know the NBA will get interesting by late February, early March by then, but of course, I think the teams are probably aren't gonna get in. Probably I'll say Nuggets, Grizzlies, Pelicans. I see the Kings. I just don't know how much they're gonna hold. and the Mavericks. I think in the West, in the East, the Celtic, Nets, Bucks, and Sixers. I'm surprised by the Cavaliers being the fifth, the number five, but
I
you
mean,
know,
I'm not necessarily because I mean, when they got Donovan Mitchell, that took that roster from kind of middling on the cusp of playoff relevancy to a straight up playoff roster. Now, I don't know if it's a championship roster yet. I don't think it's a championship roster yet, but I mean, Spider makes him really good. I mean, as evidenced by his recent 71 point outburst. He's a consistent top elite scorer.
oh yeah, that's a yeah. I wish he would have gone to the Knicks. I think the Knicks would have definitely have a lot of more. uh, He'll be more valued team, but he that's true. He made the Cleveland Cavaliers a better roster and more viable roster into the playoffs. I think you have some NASCAR updates.
Oh yeah. So the one thing I wanted to pass along here, Kevin Harvick um, has announced his retirement. He is going to race his full season and then hang up the wheel, hang up the helmet after the 2023 season. And it really feels like the end of an era here. This is truly like the last real driver from my childhood. If you don't know the story of Kevin Harvick, he was the driver that took over for Dale Earnhardt after he died in the 2001 Daytona 500. Took over his ride that turned from the 3 car to the 29 car. And he's had a great career. I think he has like 50. No, he has like 60 wins. He has a championship. He is a Hall of Famer in the sport of NASCAR. Uh, and he's really become a spokesman for the drivers um, across the garage on many issues. He's outspoken and has just had a huge impact on the sport. And definitely, he's going to be missed in the sport after this year. Um, but I mean, I'm not surprised. He's definitely hinted at this for a while. He seemed more dissatisfied with the state of the sport. Um, but still, obviously, for a veteran and a legend like Kevin Harvick to retire, it's always hard um, for the sport to see that. So obviously, it's going to be an interesting farewell tour for Kevin Harvick. I still think he's very competitive. I think he can win a couple of races this year. And I hope he can make as deep of a run in the NASCAR playoffs as he possibly can. It'd be awesome to see him walk off the track in Phoenix with a championship in his last race.
Oh yeah, I think that would be remarkable. I think ending a career with a title, that would be something really impressive.
But even if he doesn't, he still has some of the greatest wins ever. I mean, I think about like 2002 500 when he came back at Mark Martin, beat him at the start finish line out of nowhere. And of course, his first ever win against Jeff Gordon in 2001 in a tight finish at the start finish line. Of course, in a tribute just 3 weeks after Dale Earnhardt passed away. Just really a guy that really helped the sport heal from from its greatest tragedy in 2001, and really helped propel NASCAR into its peak back in the mid 2000s. So it's been consistently one of its top drivers ever since. So yeah, definitely it's going to be an interesting NASCAR season, which starts here on February the 5th. So here in a few weeks, I'll start popping my weekly motorsports updates again, and I'm very excited to see what happens when they get back to the track.
Shout out to my really good friend Allison D'Ameto. Yeah, big watching us here in Americana. And since I mentioned,
Allison.
so let's switch to Brazilian topics, and we finally have some pro action this weekend as the state championship started. Flamengo already playing at home versus Audax. It's like a game that was rescheduled for earlier because of Flamengo commitment to the FIFA Club World Cup and also the Brazilian Super Cup. So Flamengo's winning with the reserve team by 1-0. Not even Victor Pereira is coaching. I think the pro team's gonna start on week 4 of the state championship. I think they're still on the preseason. But here in the state of São Paulo, this weekend kicks off what we call the hardest state championship in Brazil, the Paulistão. 16 teams fighting for a championship. The current champion Palmeiras gonna play at home versus São Bento, which is I think it's gonna be a team that's gonna fight for relegation. I expect Palmeiras to win easily. Santos playing at home versus Mirassol, which is gonna be an emotional game. The first game after Pelé passing away, after Santos Stadium host his memorial. So it's going to be a very emotional game. It's a sold out game. All tickets were bought, so going to be a very emotional game. Then on Sunday, Corinthians play on the road in Bragança Paulista to Bragantino. Two first division in the state of two first division teams nationally colliding. Bragantino has a new coach, a Portuguese coach. Corinthians also has a new coach, not a Portuguese coach, a Brazilian coach after whole Vitor Pereira debacle. Corinthians has a lot of question marks. They renewed this contract with Yuri Alberto, which was very important, but they have to give it away a lot of young talent for that. It was more like a I feel it felt more a lot of about like an NFL trade. Uh, Corinthians got the veteran star, but they had to give it away a lot of young talent for that for Zenit from Russia. In Sao Paulo playing the last game of the week versus Ituano at home. It's still, of course, a little earlier, but I think, of course, all the four teams should go to the playoffs. It's in the group mode. Corinthians is Group A. Let me get this straight. I'm pretty sure Corinthians is in Group A. Uh, I think São Paulo is in Group B. I know Palmeiras in Group D, but because every there are like four the big four each are on one group. So Group A has Santos actually with Inter Limeira, Bragantino, Botafogo. Group B has Sao Paulo, Água Santa, Mirassol, and Guarani. Group C, Corinthians, Ferroviária, Ituano, São Bento. Group D, Palmeiras, Portuguesa, Santo André, and São Bernardo. And the first two of each group qualify for the quarterfinals, and the two worst teams in the all 16 teams get relegated. So I think my way too early predictions I made on the radio. So it's gonna be Santos and Inter Limeira. I think Inter de Limeira is gonna be a dark horse there, even though Inter Limeira fans and media don't trust this team. And the coach today on his press conference I asked about why he kept predicting the first 5 weeks. He's like, I'm thinking 1 week at a time, man. I have to win Saturday's game and then like he was in survival mode. Like I have to win the next game and think each game at a time. It gave me a little like pessimism vibe. And Group
That's
B,
never a good sign. That is
yeah,
never a good sign.
because like of course I was asked like what his goal to be in his first 5 weeks when you play 3 games at home and two on the road, and you play Corinthians at home in 1 week. So I feel like he was uh, concerned that he doesn't have a good enough roster still, so he can predict what his goal is ending in the first 5 games. So that's interesting uh, position that he got in his press conference today. Group B, I picked Sao Paulo and Mirassol, no brainer. Mirassol got promoted to Serie B, kept a lot of good players. Sao Paulo is still the big team, even though they released a lot of veteran players and signed a lot of young players. Going to be a really young roster. They got rid of a lot of old players like 38-year-old Miranda who retired, Nicão, Patrick, Reinaldo, a lot of like really veteran players. Rogério Ceni just don't want anymore. Rogério Ceni wants to work with a young roster. So in Group C, I think Corinthians and Ferroviária are gonna go, but maybe head to head with Ituano, who finished strong last season, almost got promoted to Serie A, to the first division nationally. Maybe I'm gonna go Corinthians and Ituano, and I think maybe one or even two teams from this group is gonna get relegated. I think it's gonna be one team from Group C is gonna get relegated. I think in my view. And Group D is going to be Palmeiras and São Bernardo. I think my predictions to the quarterfinals. I know it's a long, not, it's a still have 12 weeks. I love state championship. A lot of pundits and analysts hate the state championship because it's too much game. It's what differentiates Brazilian calendar to the European calendar. But me, I'm in the countryside in a small town. Really, how important state championship are for small towns is viable. So I'm always going to be defending state championships here in Brazil because how important it is for small towns. Not they have a chance to compete with the big dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I always love like seeing those opportunities, like an FA Cup, like when Wigan beats like Arsenal or something. Like I mean that stuff is just so cool to see in the state championships, and I'm always interested, especially for a team like Rio Branco. The
Yeah,
opportunity it gives your club and
yeah,
gives all those other little clubs across the country a chance against the big dogs like Santos and like Corinthians and Botafogo and all the other big dogs that normally are on the top. One comment I want to make earlier though is I'm very fascinated by Santos and what they're going to do this year. Um, just as you said, off the emotions of Pele. Or can they come out? Because Santos, was the big dog with Pele. They're probably the most storied team in Brazilian history because of that run with Pele. But if you really look at their recent history, they haven't been on the top.
no, no,
And
no. I mean, they haven't gone to the playoffs in the state championship for the past 2 seasons. They
yeah,
fight for relegation in the state championship for the past 2 seasons. They have to make the playoff this year because it's three straight times not making the playoffs in the state championship. That's embarrassing. That's really embarrassing. Santos is the team that has the most pressure coming to this state championship because they're in the longest drought to not winning the state championship. Their last title, I believe, was 2016. So they're the longest drought in the Big Four. They haven't gone to the playoffs for the last 2 seasons. They got the new coach, which Odair Herman, which is more like a South kind of tradition, more like a focus on defense, on focus on kind of marking, and not so much on offense. And Santos' roster is completely revamped from last season, so I'm also intrigued. I'm gonna see Santos actually next week when they come here to play Guarani in the close town to Campinas. I'm intrigued what they're gonna be playing next week when they face Guarani, and I'll be broadcasting the game. So I'm excited about that.
absolutely. Honestly, I could see them having like a Montreal Canadiens type run from like 2021, a team that really wasn't doing too well, but kind of got lightning in a bottle, a historic team. Um, you know, uh, it feels like if Santos pulls off a run like that, it'd be in that vein.
That's true. Their group is not hard. I mean, of course, they have the other the other team who is in the first division nationally, which is Bragantino. So it's going to be harder compared to like São Paulo, Corinthians, or Palmeiras have. All the other three teams don't have a kind of like a top dog in their group like Bragantino. Of course, Bragantino was going to be in some group in this Paulistão. I mean, Santos got unlucky, but they don't have to face Bragantino at least. Like Corinthians going to have to play this Sunday, but they're going to have to play for a spot. I pick Inter Limeira more because it's like the closest team in the first division, the state tournament, because I always root for the local team, but I know deep down Bragantino and Santos are, the two big teams, and only a disaster this year will make Santos be out of the playoffs. Only a disaster.
Yeah, that you can't have that, especially when you are one of the top teams just in the history of Brazilian soccer. You always have to advance to the state playoffs. No excuse to not make the state playoffs.
Yeah, in the format that you have, where you have, it's two spots for four teams in a group, and you play and you don't play the teams on your group. You play all the other 12 teams outside of your group. So I think you brought a good point. Santos, I think, is not the favorite, but it has the most pressure in this tournament to at least make a deeper run, because of how they failed in the last 2 seasons. And last but not least, the Brazilian Super Cup defined a date, which is going to be Flamengo and Palmeiras. Flamengo, the Brazilian Cup champion, versus Palmeiras, the Brazilian national champion. It's gonna be in Brasilia of all places. A lot of people are joking about it, like, well, all the action Brasilia got because of the political turmoil. Finally, something, not about politics there that all eyes are going to be on. So it's going to be on Sunday, January 29th. I think it's going to be an epic game. Whoever wins this game, I think Flamengo needs to win more because Vitor is going to be Vitor Pereira's big first test as Flamengo head coach. If Vitor Pereira loses this game, they're going to have less confidence going into the FIFA Club tournament because this game's literally right before they fly to Morocco. So if Flamengo lose this game, they're going to have probably, if the Flamengo wins, I think they're going to have way more confidence coming into this FIFA Club tournament. So I think for Flamengo has higher stakes than Palmeiras because Palmeiras still like in a preseason mode. Of course, they want to beat Flamengo and get the title because Flamengo has run the table, has kind of beat Palmeiras head to head. Of course, they lost in the Libertadores, but everybody else they beat them. But I know, but I think it's good to have an opening season game like that. Two big dogs fighting for a national title.
Yeah, I mean that you always want the top dogs to fight for those titles, and you want to see the. I mean, I think it sounds like this year everyone's just anticipating Corinthians and Flamingo, with Victor Piera going up against his former
Oh,
team that he ditched Tell for,
oh my
and
god! I
but
mark
if Santos can come in and spoil the party, that would also be pretty cool.
I'm marking my calendar. I cannot wait when the Brazilian Confederation released the Brasileirão schedule and Corinthians and Palmeiras. I'm gonna be big red dot in my calendar. That game I'm going no matter what happens. I mean, it's gonna be a sold out game. I think Corinthians fans are gonna invade Itaquera because they're ready for revenge. They're angry as, and I haven't seen angrier fans of one person, I think, in a long time.
Yeah, the whole city of Sao Paulo is going to be on fire, not just Itakura.
Yeah, yeah, that's true because Corinthians has a larger fan base in São Paulo, but you know, but in terms of Vitor Pereira as a Flamengo head coach, winning this game is important because his predecessor, Paulo Souza, lost the Brazilian Super Cup to Atlético Mineiro, and they kind of derailed his time in Flamengo. So he was fired 2 months later, and probably losing that title had a big impact. So Vitor Pereira knows that he has to win that title to keep his job safe.
Oh yeah, I mean it's kind of like when the Titans went back to Philadelphia this year and AJ Brown ripped them apart. I mean that got John Robinson fired. So it's almost like a similar a similar scenario.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's kind of like similar, because kind of have repercussions, and all eyes and those two, they don't like each other. Abel Ferreira and Vitor Pereira, they had tension when when Vitor Pereira coached Corinthians and face Abel Ferreira as a Palmeiras coach. So it's going to be an interesting game on January 29, the first final game here in Brazil for the Brazilian Super Cup. But that's pretty much it. There's Copinha happening still, going to the second phase, the playoff mode. Corinthians tying nil-nil with Comercial. I'm surprised because Corinthians look like always a favorite, have a good under 20 team. Palmeiras destroyed Sampaio Correia 5-0. Sao Paulo Santos playing tomorrow. Santos lost to Santo André on yesterday, and Corinthians just scored. Literally just scored 48th minute
Oh,
48 minutes in the second half. Really beautiful goal on the shot from the right hand side. I feel bad for Comercial. They really fought. They really hold Corinthians. And at the 48th minute into the second half, the 93-minute Corinthians score. Look like they're going to advance to the third round into the playoffs to get the Copinha title. Really beautiful goal. I when I saw he's going to shoot, it looked like was going to be saved, but it was too perfect of a shot. I feel like Corinth is going to win. So, and shout out to our viewer Carla Oliveira saying hello, good night, everybody here
Hello,
in America.
Carla.
Yeah, we appreciate you watching as well. Corinthians fan, so she should be happy with as Corinthians scored 1-0 in the Copinha second round playoff game versus Comercial. So that's it for tonight.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports. This was episode 59, recorded on January 12th, 2023. It's NFL playoff time, so it's about to get down to the nitty gritty of football season. We have Super Bowl here in a few weeks as we continue to roll off here into the great year of 2023. That's Gus Tomazeli over in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm Nicholas Hill, live here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the United States, and you've been listening / watching Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports.
Like lava, heated like a sauna, penetrating through your body.